Welcome to the Geek podcast, where I don't feel like I'm dying anymore. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host Beej.
I'm glad he's not dead.
Yes, me too. Today we are talking about not that. We're talking about Star Wars. We're talking about Solo. Kinda. I think we're going to go pretty quick through it because it turns out that both of us have like a lot of nits to pick with it, and there are things that we like about it too, but we like to talk about like Star Wars and like a positive back and forth geeking out over it, and looking at our notes, we don't think that's gonna happen. So
and the last time we did an episode like this, it was the Rogue One, and that was the most we've ever disagreed about Star Wars, and I have a feeling that this may be similar to that. So we'll see, because we want to keep it positive, like you said.
In general, yes. So should we run through? Let's talk about what we like first.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
I don't really think there's much spoilery in this movie. There's one thing for sure, but a lot of it was like, it was a prequel. So it's like we kind of knew all of this stuff already. And if you have watched Clone Wars, or actually Rebels, I don't remember which one. If you've watched either one of those two, the one thing that's a spoiler isn't actually a spoiler.
Right. And I'd seen Austin had told me that there was a Rebels spoiler in it, and that was all he had seen and knew about it. And he's going to see it tonight as we're recording this, so I'm interested to see his take on it as well. But it was something that I got really excited. I was watching the entire movie for, and it happened in the last 5 minutes of the show. So yeah. I was disappointed in that because I knew that something was coming, but it made me pay attention to a lot of stuff in the movie in the background and as things were happening. So it actually knowing that made me pay attention. Just knowing it was coming and not knowing what it was made me pay a lot more attention.
Okay, well, that's something at least. I mean, I guess from here on out we'll go full spoilers, but we should probably just say, like, I think we both thought it was okay.
I actually ended up liking it a lot. I thought that the second half was way better than the first in general, but I walked out liking it. I don't think I'm going to see it again in the theater just because of the number of things going on in life, cost, and time, but I probably would otherwise. But in the end, I ended up liking it quite a bit, even though I have a lot of nits to pick. I know I like it about 10 times more than I like Rogue One.
Yeah, and I like Rogue One way more than this. I don't dislike this movie. I don't think it's a horrible movie at all. I think it's an okay action movie. I don't think it's a good Star Wars movie. I think is my problem with it. Like, okay. It's way down there on Star Wars rankings for me. It's probably like right above episode 1 and 2, but I think Revenge of the Sith beats it out, and that's kind of sad that it's so low for me. I don't know. It's just I walked out of it feeling the way that I feel when you walk out of a Marvel movie that's just okay. Like, it's better than most movies, right? Like, if you're holding it up against movies in theaters, this is better than most of them. But if you're holding it up against, just like if you walked out of, like, Ant-Man the first time and it's like, that was okay. Like, but, it was pretty good, but, like, compared to the rest of Marvel, it's just okay.
Right. Where it's fun to watch, and it was like, that's the way Ant-Man was. It's like, I haven't seen it again, but I need to before the next one comes out, but I watched it, I was like, oh, that was a fun movie, I liked that. And then I never really thought anything else about it, but it was probably better than any of the other action movies that came out that summer that I didn't watch.
Right, and so if you're talking about it in terms of all movies, I would give it, like, I don't know, like a B+, maybe, somewhere in there. If you're talking about it on, like, the Star Wars grading curve, I give it like a D, maybe a D-. Like, it didn't work for me very well.
I'd say it's solidly in the middle for me, just in terms of that. I was thinking of where it would fall on the scale when you said it was just barely above 1 and 2. That I mean, I would actually probably put it right at the episode 4 mark for me, which is my least favorite of the original trilogy. And I know some people are going to think that's sacrilege, but really that's only one up from you, where, like, right there it's because I don't like Revenge of the Sith. I think it's better than all the prequels and better than Rogue One. So it's probably the fifth from the bottom for me.
So I can see why it's there for you. I kind of thought it would land there for you. Let's talk a little bit about, and we're going to get into spoilers here, but really this is like not a movie that you can spoil. Like, everything in this it's all been talked about before. So don't let that stop you. But if you're super, super spoiler averse, here's your warning, I suppose. But I want to talk about things I like. So I liked Lando a lot. He's probably my favorite part of the movie. I liked the Kessel Run. It worked for me, even though I've seen a lot of complaints about it, but I like that part personally. I like seeing the Falcon in its like original pristine state. That was pretty cool.
I know. I loved, and the way that they showed it in space when it was pristine, I was actually amazed at how different it looked when they had made it look perfect. I didn't honestly expect it to be white. I'm not sure why, but I didn't expect the outside of it to be white.
Yeah, it was cool to see that. And then I liked seeing Corellia. I liked seeing Kessel. Both of them just like added to the lore. I mean, we knew about both of them, but now we've seen them in person. So it wasn't like a brand new revelation, which was kind of sad, but it was fine. Like, it was cool. Okay, now we've seen them on screen. That's nice. And then I really liked that they were tying Darth Maul and all of the stuff from Clone Wars and Rebels back into the mainline movies. That worked for me a lot. And that was kind of the one true spoilery thing at the end of the movie, is that Han Solo's girlfriend, Kira, was working for a guy who was working for Darth Maul the whole time as part of like the crime syndicate. So those were the things I liked. And then the one thing that like, and I'll get to my nits to pick here in a minute, but the one thing that I didn't mind that I thought was going to bug me was the actor playing Han Solo. Like,
I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
I thought it was going to really bug me. And I was like, no, it was fine. Like, I didn't think it was amazing, but it was totally okay.
And the thing that Jennifer and I were talking about it while we were in the movie is that I expected going in to not like this guy as Han, because in all of the trailers, it was like, okay, he's a little awkward, and I didn't really buy him as Han Solo. But in the movie itself, it took me maybe 5 minutes, and I didn't even think about it anymore. And I think the reason for that is that he had those cadences, he had the mannerisms down, but he was absolutely not doing a Harrison Ford impersonation. It was not him trying to be someone else. It was just him being that character and kind of adopting those mannerisms. And I really appreciated that and liked it a lot.
Yeah, he worked for me. It was totally fine. But okay, what do you like about the movie? And then I got to get all these like nits to pick off my chest. I'm just going to barrel through them, but I want to hear what you like first.
Okay, so I'll go through my likes, and like you said, just kind of theirs. I like the new Han. Like I said, he wasn't doing a Harrison Ford impression. That was the top of my list. I liked that they had actually gone through, like we knew and from the old EU, that he was part of the Empire and a deserter, that he was one of the troopers on the ground doing stuff and ended up leaving. I liked that, because at least I'm remembering him as being a deserter. He may not have been in the old stuff, but I remembered it that he was, so I was really happy about that. I really liked the second half of the movie, that I wasn't sure where they were going when it was the train part of it at the beginning, when they were robbing the train, that at that point, really the first half feels like an episode of Firefly. That when you're watching it, it is a space western, and it is absolutely really good, but it's not Star Wars. It felt like you were watching an episode of Firefly, which is not bad, but it's just not Star Wars. So the second half of the movie, I thought had a lot more of a Star Wars feel to it, so I really, really liked it. And like you said, I loved Lando, but I love Donald Glover. That I've been a fan of his since I saw him for the first time on Community when he was playing Troy. And so whenever I've been a fan of his music as Childish Gambino. I'm a fan of his stand-up stuff, that if you've never seen the stand-up special Weirdo on Netflix, it's great. He was one of the writers on 30 Rock. He's just a fantastic actor and musician. He's just talented all around. So when he got cast as Lando, I knew I was going to love it. So I loved him in that role pretty much all the way around, and especially him calling Han, just like Billy Dee did in the movies. Like, you always hear Lando calling him Han, and they establish it's because it's an inside joke between them, that when they first meet him, he calls him Han, and Han corrects him, but then the rest of the movie he calls him Han. And I really, really liked that they tossed that in just enough for people who were paying attention. And Jennifer leaned over when I laughed at it at one point, and she was like, he always calls him Han, doesn't he? I'm like, yeah, he does. And it just made me so happy that they did that. I really like Darth Maul, though I can't remember. I want to ask you a question about the Darth Maul stuff. Like you said, I can't remember if it was in Clone Wars or Rebels at which point he did what. I think it was Rebels that he was a crime syndicate guy, because Clone Wars was just the Dathomiri stuff. But is he Black Sun? Is that what he's Is that what he's in charge of, or what syndicate was he in charge of?
I don't remember. They mixed it all up when they wiped out the old canon, and Clone Wars is one of the few things that was part of the old canon that's still part of the new canon. So things are kind of convoluted. I'm not actually sure. Like Crimson Dawn and Black Sun and like what goes with what exactly. So I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, because I was really curious about that, because Kira's with Crimson Dawn, and I was like, but the little signet ring looked like it could have been a Black Sun, and so I just didn't know. I couldn't remember on that one, but I liked him, and I loved Lando's droid, L3. L337 is so great, and I love the fact that her numbers are L337, so it's like elite for like the internet stuff. Like, it's great, and so they just called her L3. It's wonderful, and the actress Jennifer and I had to look it up, that she was not voiced by Gwendolyn Christie, because she sounds like a really sassy Phasma if you listen to her. And we had to look it up, and it's somebody we didn't know at all. But I love the fact that that Lando's in love with her, that he actually is. The joke of when Emilia Clarke looks at her, or Kira looks at her and goes, how would that even work? And she's like, oh, it works. And just that line, that was one of the best lines in the movie for me. And then knowing why the Falcon is a she, that Han always calls the Falcon her, we know for real that it's a she. That the Falcon identifies as a she because of L3, and I find that truly fantastic.
Yeah, that was cool.
So those are the main things that I really liked about the movie. Like, just straight up, I liked that. I also liked that it's a Western, and that it followed Western conventions, but didn't necessarily fall in all of the Western tropes and the heist tropes and kind of that dark crime movie trope thing. So, like, the just kind of there's me, the kind of meh that I'm on the fence about is Emilia Clarke actually casting Daenerys Targaryen in this, because for a long time I didn't see Kira. All I saw was Emilia Clarke. Like, I know her. She's too recognizable to be in a Star Wars movie. While I can get over Lando, I can see Donald Glover just as Lando and fall in. For some reason, Emilia Clarke just looked, just her standing out. And later on, it clicked and I was fine with it. But it took a long time for me not to just see her. And I don't think I ever see Woody Harrelson when he's not Woody Harrelson. I mean, he's just Woody Harrelson in everything. And every movie. That's
one of my things. I'll get to that in a second here. I agree.
And to me, that's not necessarily a bad thing for him. Like, Emilia Clarke is just kind of but I'll end up liking Kira. But with Woody Harrelson, it's like, whether he's in Hunger Games or Cheers or Natural Born Killers or whatever it is, he's Woody Harrelson. Zombieland, anything, I don't care what he is. That's just who he is. And I see him as that. So that can even be considered here or there on good or bad in this movie. But with Emilia Clarke, like, what I really liked is that the writing, and Jennifer pointed this out, was that she didn't fall back on that betrayal trope, that even though at the end she did not go with Han, that they ended up splitting up, he didn't get what he wanted out of the relationship, but she didn't betray him. She betrayed her boss, and she did everything that she could to take care of Han and set him up and put him in a good place, but she also did what was best for her. So it was kind of a turning that trope on its head, that yes, she didn't go with him, and it wasn't the two of them riding off into the sunset, but it was also not that she was screwing him over, that she wasn't putting one over on him. It was her doing good for him as much as she could, and then while retaining the power to be the next crime lord, basically. And Jennifer pointed out, and I didn't even notice this as it went through because it's just part of it, that when Han was about to apply for the military and he saw the Imperial propaganda, they play the Imperial March as the music in the propaganda ad. And that means that the Imperial March exists as the Imperial March in the Star Wars universe. That it's not just a soundtrack from John Williams, that they have actually included it as sound within universe. So the Imperial theme is literally the Imperial theme in universe and out. And Jennifer noticed that, and that's something I would have never even thought of.
Well, I guess the thing about the actress and like Woody Harrelson and all that kind of gets into, let me just start my nitpicks here. Like, I do not like that. Star Wars has always been better because they cast unknowns. So you never,
Right.
they don't always do it, but if they cast someone more well known, it's usually like a side character that's not in it for very long. There's a couple exceptions, like, you know, Qui-Gon Jinn, like, and I guess Amidala, like, you know,
Sam Jackson.
yeah, there's some, but I don't know. It's never been more in your face than it was in this movie. That it's like, this person's popular, so we're casting them. And
Right.
that really bugged me because I couldn't unsee her as Daenerys. I couldn't unsee Woody Harrelson. I couldn't unsee Maeve as I don't even know what her name was in this because she was barely in it. She was just Maeve for a little bit. Like, none of those worked for me. I wish they did more unknown actors and actresses because maybe that's why Han worked so well for me, is because I didn't know him.
Yeah, I had no preconceptions coming in on him at all. And also, I like Paul Bettany. That whenever I heard, like, Paul Bettany's one of those actors that I love in everything. I've loved him since he was Chaucer in A Knight's Tale with not Woody Harrelson, with Heath Ledger, and he is awesome. I mean, he plays Vision, for goodness sake. That it's funny that he is terrifying as I can't remember his name now, this crime lord, and he is.
It doesn't matter. Nothing in this movie matters.
I disagree, and that's how I feel about Rogue One, and but I wish I could remember his name, but. He's terrifying, but Vision is just so calm and wonderful. And it's that same voice and same actor. I really like him, where I don't even see him anymore because I think he's such a good actor.
Okay.
But he was one that I really liked in there. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Whenever I heard about the casting of this movie, the only one I was really excited about was Lando. And it's because I'm a Donald Glover fan, not because he was cast as Lando.
Okay. So I have a bunch of problems. Let me just go here for a minute. So one of my biggest problems with the movie is that it's like, hey, remember everything that ever was hinted at in Han's backstory? What if all of it happened in like 4 days, like in one movie? Like, seriously.
I didn't even notice this until you put this note. Like, I knew all this stuff was going to be in the movie.
Join the Empire, free Chewbacca, meet Lando, free the slaves on Kessel, do the Kessel run in under 12 parsecs, win the Falcon from Lando, get your iconic blaster. Every single thing that's ever been hinted at that's interesting about him, which honestly, they probably should have taken each of those things and they could have made it its own discrete movie and hung the entire thing on that. No, we're going to pack all of it into one movie that happens over the course of 3 or 4 days. Why? Like, and then why did they have to be so explicit with all of it too?
Oh, they were too.
It's bad. It's like they don't trust the audience at all. They won't let you read between the lines. They have to put it right in your face. And even right up through the end, when it was Emphas Nask, like, revealed, you know, that she's a person and she's fighting back, and she's like, we're going to use this fuel for rebellion. And when they said rebellion, it just made me cringe inside.
Really?
Like, the movie did not need that. Like, you can even just say, we'll use it to fight back, or we'll push back against the Empire. Not everything has to be about rebellion. It is such a, it doesn't fit with the tone of this movie. And to go out of the way to say, maybe someday you'll reconsider and join us, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, audience, nudge, 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 nudge. Like, it's so bad. I don't know how that made it into the final cut. And it's like, those are my biggest gripes with the movie, is that, you know, what one of my friends online said, that we were talking about this, she said there's no reason it had to have literally every scrap of story that we already knew thrown in here. And that is my number one complaint. Like, why did you do that? Why didn't you just pick one of these interesting things and then build an entire movie and have that be a little piece of it, instead of cramming every little thing into this, just so you have to have it all explicit for the audience? And I mean, it felt so incredibly safe as a movie. Like, it didn't push expectations at all. And I love Star Wars when it's pushing expectations, when it's trying new things, when it's being weird. Star Wars is at its best for me.
And that's why, for the most part, whenever I think about it now, that The Last Jedi works so well is because that's what it did. And there's so much backlash for it, but that's what I like about The Last Jedi, is that it's completely different. And the more I sit on it, the happier I am that it's not a typical Star Wars movie.
And the more I think about this movie, the more I get not upset by it, but the less I like it and the more it bugs me. Because I mean, and some of it is in the marketing too. Like it was marketed as like a fun heist movie, right? And instead it was this like dark underworld story. It didn't really have a lot of fun in it. And Star Wars usually has some fun in it.
Oh man, I disagree. See, I thought this one was way fun. Like this is
wasn't fun.
Like I thought this was fun and watching, and I was laughing a lot during this movie.
I was cringing a lot in this movie. I think almost everywhere you laughed, I was probably cringing because why did they have to shove that in your face? Where is the subtlety? It's not in this movie, I'll tell you that. And
I mean, I'll agree on like putting everything in there. There was one thing that I really liked that they put in there that I half cringed at when I saw it, because I'm like, I know exactly why you did it, but Han shot first at the end whenever he killed
oh my gosh,
whenever he killed Woody Harrelson. Like,
yeah, I
he
know
shot
he did.
first. Like,
everybody knows he did.
Like, that's the thing. It was so on the nose, but at the same time, I'm glad that they did it, because it was, I don't even know why. Like, it's not even something that's good on that one. It's just that I like it.
Once. Like, if they did it once or twice throughout the movie where it's so on the nose, it would be fine. But it's literally everything they touch. They can't help but give it that kind of treatment. And
that's
what
partially
me.
I think that's where the directorial problems were coming in, because the reason that the original director got kicked off of it is because he wanted to make the entire thing really tongue-in-cheek and wink wink nudge nudge, and you can't escape that without reshooting everything, and they didn't have time or budget to do all of it, so they had to keep parts of it like that. And
they
Ron
reshot
Howard,
most of the movie though.
They reshot most of it, but there were still things like that I don't know, but some of it, they just had too much trouble putting it together. But
yeah, well, and there was no humor. Like it was billed as like a fun heist movie, and it was also kind of, marketed as like there's funny stuff in here. It's going to be like humorous. It was not a humorous movie. Like I didn't laugh.
I don't know. See, I thought it was so funny. See, I loved this one because of that, because I thought there was a lot more character and life in this one than there was ever in Rogue One. Like these were characters I cared about and I liked to watch, as opposed to Rogue One, where I literally still to this day don't know any of their names. Except for Jen. I mean, I know Jen.
This made me appreciate Rogue One so much more, because Rogue One actually added to the story of Star Wars. All this did was just fill out some details that we already know. And I know you feel like that about Rogue One, but like Rogue One,
I'm curious.
Like, I can see the argument that it wasn't a story that needed to be told, but I felt like in hindsight, it added to the universe. It probably didn't need to be told, but it gave us more context and it gave us interesting things. This one didn't give us anything that we didn't know already. Like everything in this movie was something that we already knew, where Rogue One, you can't say that for it. You could say,
I can't think of anything in Rogue One that I didn't already know though. Like what did it add? Like, and this isn't me even being contrary. Like I'm actually curious, because I feel that happened with both of these movies. Like that they both didn't need to be told and that they didn't add anything specific to the narrative, but I don't know what Rogue One added that we didn't already know.
I mean, Rogue One, basically, like, for the overall story, like, where it contributes to Star Wars is, like, Act 3, and then the epilogue. So the whole thing where, basically the part that sets up Episode 4, right? Like, that is what it added to Star Wars mythos. The first two acts of the movie, there are pacing problems, and there's other issues with the first two acts of Rogue One. And, the characters are not going to be iconic forever, but the whole part with like how the Death Star plans actually got to the rebels and the desperate chase that leads into Episode 4 was something that we never knew anything about. It was just like, we have the plans. That was all that we knew. And they fleshed that out into a whole movie. Whereas with Solo, it was just like, here's all the things that you ever knew about Han. We're going to show you them again, but explicit this time instead of just hinted at. But you already know all of these things.
Well, part of that is that I think it added to Han himself, that because a lot of it that we're approaching it with is that we knew, because we're Star Wars fans, that a lot of people didn't know going in, because it was from EU stuff, it was just hinted at elsewhere. And I mean, that was part of what I liked about it, is that it didn't add to the overall story, but I thought that it added to the character of Han. And it wasn't even so much that it added anything that we didn't know or didn't have a feel for already. It was just that it added more to his character. And
I didn't think it added anything more. See, the thing that would actually be more interesting to me at this point is now that they've gotten this movie out of their system, where they just rehashed everything and tried to sell it to us again, if they actually took these actors and they made a sequel to this movie, I feel like they've gotten this out of their system and they might actually add to the character next time.
No, that's true.
I didn't get anything added to the character this time at all.
Okay. I mean, I can really see that, and that's not an okay in the dismissive way, like it sounded like I realized when I said it. It's an okay as in, yeah, I mean, I can totally understand that.
Yeah, well, and but, I had to get that off my chest because it's been building up for like over a week now. It's been like just bugging me. But all of that said, I didn't hate the movie. I just thought it was a mediocre movie, which is a letdown for the Star Wars universe, because every Star Wars movie has left me feeling so good about it that to walk out of one and be like, it was okay, is a letdown. Again, it's grading on that Star Wars curve, just like we grade on the Marvel curve, you know?
Yeah.
That's why it bugged me. I didn't think that it was a mediocre movie in general. I thought it was pretty good for like a movie, but for a Star Wars movie, it just wasn't there for me. And like I said, I walked out of it feeling kind of like when I walk out of a quote unquote bad Marvel movie. It's not actually a bad movie compared to all movies. It's just bad on that Marvel scale. So overall, I thought that Solo is trying to tell a story that doesn't need to be told, and it tells it in a very clumsy way, and it has all sorts of prequel problems that you run into just like anytime you do a prequel.
Yes.
But, I mean, with all that off my chest, if they want to come back and give a sequel to this movie, I'm actually a lot more interested. Like, if they can get one director with one vision, and now that they've gotten all of this, like, just junk out of their system where they had to be so on the nose and show us everything that we already knew, they almost have to build the character after this one because they've used all their material.
And they won't, because it flopped so bad. Like, it did not make money. And that's the sad part, is because it didn't make money and it won't get that sequel that would be really cool. But I think, to go on what you said, like, going into the dislikes that I had with it, like, you didn't mention two of them that I fully expected you to, because they were the cringeworthy moments for me. Well, tell me. Yeah, no, tell me. I'm looking at your list now. Okay, so
well, apparently you and I disagree on the Kessel Run. I actually like that sequence, but I get the argument against it. Yeah. I totally get the argument against it.
I mean, I like the sequence. Like, don't get me wrong. That scene and everything that was going on, I thought was fantastic, and I loved it. I thought that the actual logistics of how they were trying to make it, like the way that they were talking about it with the parsecs, like they could have done it better. Like, I hated them trying to make it
about that sequence. That is how I feel about this entire movie. Does that make sense? It's like,
it does.
Any given sequence, any given scene, I didn't hate the scene or the sequence. It's the way that they constructed it like that just bugged me.
And what really gets me about it, and it's with a lot of this stuff too, the Kessel Run, I'll use the Kessel Run as an example, and then the next two, because the Kessel Run, it didn't have to be forced the way that it was script writing. That was the issue here, because it's like, okay, he does the Kessel Run, they even establish that it's distance and that that it's too long, there's only this one route through the nebula, and just all this, they establish exactly what it is, but the way that they do it, they don't actually lead up to it and talk about how what the Kessel Run is. They don't actually, that people would try this before. They just start calling it that after they establish it, and then at the point at which they cut the whatever it's called, the cut into the nebula, they don't talk really about it being a shortcut and that it's going to cut parsecs off. They just say we have to go here because it's quicker. So they don't establish it that it's distance. And then at the very end of it, when they get onto whatever the refinery planet was called, he's like, I made the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs. And it's just like, yeah, okay, that nobody cares now because you didn't establish this and write it correctly. You didn't lead up to that meaning anything. And so that really got me. And where it was just like, that was forced. But what made me actually cringe and think that I was going to full on hate this movie, not even just dislike this movie a little bit as a Star Wars movie, but I thought I was going to hate this movie, because I hate these points that Han spoke Shiriwook. Okay, I wanted to punch somebody when Han was lying in the mud and went, because whoever thought that was a good idea ought to be dragged out into the street and punched in the throat, because it is stupid. There is no reason for that because it establishes that Chewie understands English. It has been established. The rest of the movie, he didn't say anything in Shirawook. You know that Chewie understands him in basic, actually. So let me nerd out on this one. And so when he's speaking basic, and then they could have done it in a way that Chewie would have growled at him in that same scene, and Han respond in the exact same way that he has responded in all of the other movies. And no, you don't want to bite my head off and feed it to your gerbil or whatever it would be. And Chewie would have stopped and been like, oh, you understood me. How is that possible? Where that's all it would have taken. Instead, they had him and try to speak it and sound like an idiot. I hated that. If you couldn't tell, like,
Yeah,
it was
no, I can tell.
awful.
Well, and I see your issue with Corellia too, which I question that, but I also think this is the first time we've actually seen Corellia in the new canon.
In the new canon, it is. Okay, so Corellia in the old canon was pretty and green and rolling, kind of this Edenic paradise world, and it
was
is
like
a shipyard
Corellia
where
in the old canon was the best of Naboo and Coruscant mixed together, basically.
Yes. And now it is Detroit Android City.
Yeah,
And
apparently.
It is a trash heap. It is a slum. It is Nal Hutta. And there is and really, even I understand them making that choice that there would be a slum, but not Corellia the planet, because it is the primary place where almost all of the starships are made outside of the Kuat drive yards, and there is no way that the capital city, Coronet, would be an entire slum. Like, it doesn't make any in-universe logical sense why one of the biggest, most robust commerce cities and planets in the galaxy would be a crime-ridden, just underslum. That even if it's not pretty, I don't understand why that's the case.
I thought it was like set in a certain sector of the city. I thought that's how they got away with. I would need to rewatch the movie, which I'm not going to do anytime soon.
Well, one thing that I noticed was something they did the same thing that they did with Jakku, is that he was talking to somebody and was like, yeah, I'm going to get this ship and I'm going to go back to Corellia. And they're like, I don't hear that very often. Like, people wanting to go back. And it's like, what? But Corellia is good. And so they made the entire place be terrible. And then, like, the same place when he's talking about that, when he gets his friggin' name. Okay.
Oh, that was bad. That was
That was bad. Like, it was too on the nose for me. Like, it was too terrible. Like, okay, so Han. Okay, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie, and you've already been spoiled on stuff anyway, but Han Solo's not his name. His name is Han. He doesn't have a surname. He doesn't have a family name because he's a street urchin. He's Aladdin. So that's fine. Let him not have a last name. He goes and signs up for the military, and they need a last name. That's great. He signs up for the Empire, and they're like, "What's your last name?" And in the movie, he's like, and then they're like, "Who's your people?" And he's like, "Don't really have any people." And the guy's like, "Oh," and he thinks about it for a second. He's like, Solo. And he's like, because he doesn't have any people. And it's like, oh my God, no. And like, even if they had written that differently, they wanted it to be something that was given to him when he joined the Empire, it could have been really easy because he had just been split up from Kira. They had been blocked at the checkpoint, and he could have looked back at her, been longing, and said, I guess I'm Solo. When they're like, who's your people? Like, who's your people, or who are your people? And he would have been like, I don't have any. And looking back at Karen, like, I'm Solo now. And they would have, oh, Solo, and gone with that. I would have been fine with something like that. But they played it, like you said before, that wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of tongue in cheek.
The whole movie plays itself that way.
And it's like, there are and it does. Don't get me wrong. I can appreciate that for where you're coming from, why you don't like it. But these were the moments I feel like that original director came in, and like they didn't take these out for some reason. And this part, I thought I was going to hate the movie entirely because of the Shirawook part and then him getting his name. Like, I could deal with everything else in the movie, but those are two of the worst things I've ever seen in a movie ever, and I think they're worse than anything that they're Jar Jar Binks, like Misa Bombad kind of stuff bad. Like,
they're bad, yeah,
bad. And then like I said, the Corellia stuff, the Kessel Run thing. But one thing I'm amazed you didn't mention is that for the at least the first half of the movie, the colorist basically just washed everything out, made it too dark to see, and it was like you were watching the entire movie. At least my projector was like I was watching the movie through two sets of 3D glasses.
Ooh,
was
no.
it? Because it was
No,
so
it was
dark.
your projector.
Like everything was dim for me.
No,
okay,
I mean,
so,
it starts a little darker, like in the underworld, but it's not actually super dark. I didn't feel like that.
okay, because even when he was in there with like Lady Proxima or whatever her name was, like I couldn't even see her. Like she was just kind of barely there. Like it was so dark. Like even when they were on a snow planet.
Experience. We talked about that last time.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. It eventually lightened up even as a movie, and I never noticed it again. But it was one of those things where I thought the colorist was just straight up off.
Wow.
And so, but
that sucks.
For like it lasted maybe 30 minutes, and then it got into the brighter parts of the movie. But it's like watching The Handmaid's Tale in a bright room. You just don't do it.
Okay. Wow. We had way more to say than I thought we did. I want to talk about one more thing, and then maybe we just pick our top one Geekery thing, and then we'll do a whole Geekery episode next week, because we both have a ton to talk about, and this always happens with Star Wars. We should just come to the conclusion that it will never not happen.
Because we thought we were going to get through this in maybe 15 minutes.
That didn't happen.
And right now it's in 36.
Let's talk about what's next for the Star Wars stories, because this movie is tanking. Like it's still making more money than everything else out there. But if you know how like the movie industry works, it's a matter of expectations and projections and budget, right? So for the budget of this movie and the amount of time and effort that went into it, they were expecting to get like 150 million opening weekend. I think is what they
had said 151, and it came in at 83. Yeah, 150 to 83. So it was it significantly,
and like I don't want to obsess over the numbers, except to say like it did not do what they expected it to do. So I just don't think they know what they want these to be yet. Like it took them a little while to figure out what to do with Marvel and how they would have all these independent stories. They come together for Avengers, split back up. Like they know what they're doing with the mainline Star Wars series, the numbered saga, but they don't really know what they want to do with the Star Wars stories. And I think they're playing it super safe because of that. And it's doing a disservice to the universe, because like the rumored movies coming up are Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. And like, I really want an Obi-Wan movie. I feel like there's a story there that could be told, especially with Ewan McGregor.
Oh yeah.
Like there's something to do. The Boba Fett one just doesn't interest me at all. I don't think I need that. Like I'll see it. Like you give me any Star Wars movie, I will see it. It's not really a question, but I don't think Boba Fett is something that needs our time and attention. I want them to do something to get away from established characters more than anything else. And
they're going to do that with the Rian Johnson trilogy, at least.
I'm so excited for that.
I am too, and I'm hoping it goes off into the uncharted territories, and you see
Unknown
all
regions.
Unknown regions. Yeah, thank you. I don't know what I'm thinking. Maybe I don't know what has the uncharted territories in it. But it's like, I want to know about that stuff, and I'm cool with it being Boba Fett as long as it's not little kid Boba Fett that was in Rebels and Clone Wars. Like I would love to see adult Boba Fett stuff, and I think that's great. And I would love to see old man Boba Fett from the novels if they got him out of the Sarlacc like they did in the old novels, and you get crotchety old Boba Fett going through like he was in the what was it, the Legacy of the Force books. That'd be great. We won't get it. We're going to get stupid young Boba Fett, but I don't want that one. And though I did notice, speaking of Boba Fett, just one last thing. Did you notice when he said that Tobias Beckett, that Woody Harrelson's character killed Aura Singh, and that he pushed her off a cliff or something?
I think so, yeah.
That was how he knew him, was that he was the one that killed Aura Singh, and I was like, that's awesome. Just little things like that I appreciate. Just them bringing up stuff in universe to tie stuff together.
Yeah, I mean, this movie did make some things canon that used to be EU only, which is pretty cool, I suppose. But that's like such a peripheral benefit to me being let down by the movie, I guess.
Understandable.
Anyway, that's how we feel about Solo. Not the best Star Wars movie, but still pretty good compared to general movies. I think that's where we land. Yeah. You land higher than I do, but we expected that all along.
Yep, we did. I mean, if you go back and listen to our Rogue One recording on it and how we disagreed about it. At the end of it, we were talking about what we expected out of Solo, and I was like, I expect more out of it than you do, and I don't expect a lot. So it's basically I expected a space western, and that's what I got. It was, a little bit rougher around the edges than I would have liked, but like you said, you wish they would get away from the established characters, and I want them to get out of the established stories. Stop telling the ones that we know things about, and even if you're using characters we know, tell us new stories about them.
Please. Yes, next time. Okay, with that, Geek You Out for the week, you guys can go to gameflyoffer.com/geek and get a free 1-month trial on us. You can get a game sent directly to you. I've had a bunch of them lately, and we don't have enough time to talk about any of this week. But next week, we're going to do all Geekery, and I will catch you up on everything that I have tried and sampled and sent back and come to conclusions on. The network. Don't forget about the network. We love the network. Geekitude with Joe Hogan and Ray Vargas. I don't know what they covered this week because the episode's not out yet, but it's always fun to listen to. Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. Chelsea was moving. She was out this week. So Katie actually had Ray from the Geekitude podcast onto her podcast, and they talked about rom-coms, and it was a really good episode. I listened to it this morning. And then the Comic Box had its last episode, so we can't let that go unmentioned, unnoticed. It was really good. Rob did like a huge episode of just Q&A, and it was good. I'm sad to see it go, but Rob is taking a break, and then he's kind of going to be like our, not editor at large, podcaster at large for the network. He can jump in and guest host and show up on other people's shows to talk about movies, or I think he's going to do prep episodes for comic book movies on the Geekitude podcast. He will be around. He's not going anywhere. It's just that the Comic Box in particular is closed for now. So if you've ever listened to it, go check out the last couple episodes. They're really good. With all that said, it's time for Weekly Geekery. We're each going to pick one thing and talk about it because that's about all the time we have for this week. And I restarted Persona 5. I'm not even going to pick that. I'll talk about it next week. But you go first. What do you have?
Well, I saw Deadpool 2, and this was what Jennifer and I were going to talk about last week. And we ended up not, but I wanted to talk about it with you because you haven't seen it, have you?
No, I've listened to a bunch of spoiler casts about it, but I have not seen it. And I probably won't get a chance to until it comes out at home, honestly.
That was one I didn't expect you to have seen. I would have been kind of astonished if you had seen it in the theater, but it's one where I wasn't really excited about Deadpool 2. It was something that I didn't necessarily want to go see, and Jennifer did, and it was way better than the first one. And I really liked the first one, but once they got away from that origin story thing like you were talking about that you hate so much, they were able to just tell this story, and they did so many fun things with this movie. They played with pretty much everything. And when you give Deadpool time travel, because they brought in Cable in this one, so he is so there's time travel immediately. It really does some fun stuff, and they just cast this one so well. It's well written and it's well cast that when they brought in the X-Force stuff, they knew exactly what they were doing to make these characters fit into the Deadpool style of the Marvel movies here, where Domino is a character who I've never cared anything about in the comics, but I need them to put Domino as a main character in another movie, and I have a feeling she's going to be in Deadpool 3, or maybe they're calling it X-Force instead of Deadpool 3, but she is awesome. That I know I read, or Jennifer read, or one of us read and told the other that they had showed this movie to test audiences, and they told them that they needed to have more Domino in it, so they went and re-edited it to put more of her in it because people liked her so much, and she really is that fantastic in the movie. And I also love Cable. Like, they did a great job with Cable, and I didn't even realize, because I'm kind of stupid, that it was Josh Brolin playing Cable in this movie as well. And I say as well is because he's Thanos in Infinity War and all the other Marvel movies. So it was really weird to me to not notice that he was playing both of these characters in Marvel movies. But it was funny when Deadpool referred to him as Thanos one time. That one was because, Deadpool breaks the fourth wall constantly. So when he was referring to him as Thanos, it made me laugh so hard. But just everything they did about this one was just fun to watch, which is something I didn't have with Infinity War. and it's not that, I mean, I didn't get to do the Infinity War episode with you, but like I really did like Infinity War, but it wasn't fun to watch. Like it's not something, it was very serious and very epic, and this one told, actually strangely enough, a really personal story, which I didn't expect out of Deadpool. I didn't expect to have way more emotions and just actual feels and feelings about Deadpool 2 than I would Infinity War after a 10-year build-up. But I had more of an emotional connection to Deadpool 2, which completely blew my mind and really made it one of my favorite movies I've seen in a long, long time. So if you're on the fence about seeing Deadpool 2 at all and you're thinking about it, go check it out while it's in the theater, because it is a lot more fun than I thought. And it was Jennifer who wanted to go see it, and I'm really, really happy that she did, because she was like, hey, you need to get out of the house and I want to go see this. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I went and had a great time.
I'm glad you liked it. That's good.
Like it was great. So
good.
So I loved it.
I beat a ton of games this week. Like I started and I finished 5 games this week.
Holy cow.
It was a lot. I mean, it was a holiday weekend, and then I was sick a little bit last week. Like I had some time. So like I said, I think next week between you and I, we're going to talk about a lot of games.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Detroit Become Human, because it's probably the most relevant time-wise right now. And also, it came out on Friday, and I beat it on Saturday. And it was a good, solid, like 10 hours of game, maybe a little bit more than that. But it is a sci-fi, like AI-based choose-your-own-adventure game. And like that right there is just kind of my wheelhouse. Like I really like, choose your own adventure games.
That is your jam.
I'm a sci-fi fan. I love talking about AI, all of that stuff. It has lots of questions about like personhood and what makes something or someone alive, like consciousness and choice and free will and all that. That being said, there are I don't know if I want to say problems, but there are very blatant like allegories for racism in this that I am not even remotely qualified to talk about as like a straight white man in the suburbs. Like I can't even go there. But things like, android rights being a placeholder for all sorts of other marginalized people's rights. And then like there's this whole thing where like androids have to be in the back of the bus. Like it can't get more blatant than that. There's an android compartment in the back of the bus that they have to stay in.
Wow.
Like it's stuff like that. It's very in your face, and it's not subtle, even though the game was pitched as like, oh, it's going to be something totally different. No, it's not related to racism at all. It is. Like
I don't know how they marketed like pre-stuff, like previewed it, but all of the ads that I've seen for it, it is very obvious that this is allegory for racism and marginalized people. Like there is no way that it's not, based on the television ads that I've seen.
Okay, so maybe the marketing finally got with it, but in all of the like production interviews, the people who were in charge of this game were like, oh, no, we're doing our own thing, which it's not true at all. So if you've heard that, don't go into the game expecting that, because it's very much like racism. That, I mean, it's a placeholder for racism. With like that being said, the fact that's not handled super well and it's very in your face, I really enjoyed this game. Just like the high production values, and it's a choose your own adventure where choices actually matter. I think I told you when I played the demo, you can see the whole flow chart of like all your choices and how they affected everything in that scene. That happens after every scene for the entire game. And some scenes are like a good half an hour worth of playing, or maybe 45 minutes. Like they can be super long. And just seeing all of the choices and how earlier choices in the game give me different options later in the game or lock off other ones, I was so impressed that my choices actually matter. And it flows so smoothly. Like you can't see the seams at all, where you can in a lot of other choose your own adventure stuff. The choices actually matter, and the production values are through the roof. So it's just like, okay, sign me up. Like I'm there for this game. You play 3 different androids and you jump between vignettes with them, which it ends up cutting out all of the like non-essential parts of story, so you never have to deal with their boring parts in between interesting things. So the pacing of this game is actually awesome. Like it's nonstop, beginning to end, because anytime you wrap up a scene or a thought with a character, it jumps to another character, and by the time you get back to it, you've played through probably 2 more, and enough time has passed that they can be like anywhere that makes sense. So is it played? I know like the 3, like you've mentioned down here, and you're getting right to that, where the
three stories intersect with one another.
Yes.
And from the main characters, does that mean because the way they intersect and the way that they have structured them to go back and forth, that they're happening concurrently at the same time? Or so that time passes because you're in the other vignettes? Or is it just something where it feels like that for you as a player?
No, they're mostly happening concurrently. I don't know if it's 100% that way, but it's close enough that it works. And
Okay.
it's really cool. So one of the androids is like a special unit that's a detective android that's helping hunt for deviants. And deviants are androids that are gaining free will. I mean, it's Blade Runner, right? Like,
Yeah.
nothing in this game is unique, even though the creators of it would like you to think it is. We've seen all of these things before, either from history and like, the history of like racism in America, or just from sci-fi in general. Like if you take those two things as sources, nothing in this game is new, but it's the way that it's mixed together and it's the way that it's produced that like it still worked for me. But anyway, like the androids that have free will or are coming into their own consciousness, they're called deviants. So there's one of the characters you play is he's a detective that helps other human detectives hunt for these deviants, and the other two characters you play are deviants. And so you end up hunting yourself at some points in the game, which is really interesting. And there's a couple scenes where the characters intersect and you actually have to control both sides of the conversation at the same time because both of your characters are there.
That's really awesome. Like that part, the gameplay for this sounds fantastic.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's a Quantic Dream game, which I haven't played much of their stuff, but I know other people have. I think Heavy Rain and Indigo Prophecy are the two I want to say are like they're more well known for. So if those mean anything to you, it's the same team, it's the same developer. I always forget. No, it's Quantic Dream is the name of the developer. So like I said, this game was like right up my alley. It's choose your own adventure. It's sci-fi. It's AI. It's questions of consciousness. There's enough philosophy in it and like what's the meaning of consciousness and life and all that. Like it hooked me. It's not going to be for everyone, and that's totally fine. And there are probably all sorts of problems with the allegories and the parallelisms that they draw that I don't have any insight into as, again, a straight white male in the suburbs. I'm just not even remotely qualified to speak to that. So take that with a grain of salt. The rest of it I stand by. Like it's a really interesting choose your own adventure game if you're into that kind of thing.
And I know that I will never play this game. And it's weird. It's not for anything that you have said. And the entire reason that I will never play this game is all of the advertisements I've seen, all of the videos that I've looked at and watched for this. I despise the graphics on it. And because it has that weird uncanny valley point of graphics that I've mentioned before, where it's just photorealistic enough to make everything in the game look super fake and call it out where there is no way. Like, I hate looking at it. That it's not even it is a visceral reaction on, that's not real, stop it, that it hits me with. And I don't, like, I was interested in downloading the demo, and then I saw the game in motion, and it was like, can't do it. Like, this one's not for me. Like, for some reason, the graphics on this just hit me wrong.
Some of that is honestly on purpose for the androids because they're supposed to feel that way. The humans in the game are not, but some of it is like, especially the deviant hunter. He's kind of supposed to feel uncanny-ish and not quite human enough, and that might, I'm not trying to defend it. Like, I'm sure you still feel like that because I know you and your approach to these things, but some of that might be intentional.
Okay. Like, I could totally see that. That's actually something that I thought might have happened, but when I saw that some of the human characters in the videos were like that too, it was like, it's not just the actual synthetic people that they're trying to represent.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, we both have a ton of games. You have JRPGs. I have other choose your own adventures and short form narratives. And I beat a Castlevania game, kinda. I got to talk about that, and Marvel games and a bunch of GameFly. I'm just looking through my list right now. I think next week we're just going to catch up on video games and talk about that for a good hour.
Yep. And that's probably what it will actually be. Just catching up on games like this. And it's really sad that because our topic was going to be about choosing game consoles, and it turns out that it's going to be about all of these games, which kind of ties in to some of it because these are the games that made us choose the consoles that we've done. But we'll eventually get back to that to be able to talk about because it's evergreen. But we have gone through a lot of geekery this year.
It's been great,
we've actually.
though. We try to embrace it. I think it's working out well.
I think so too. I like it. And if you guys like it, let us know. That's something we want to hear from you. We want to know what you think about the new structure this season as well. So shoot us an email. Let us know.
Yeah. You could even say that they could write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter at geek2geekcast. We also have the longer discussion threads on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And we're on Slack too, so if you want to let us know there, go to slack.geek2geekcast.com for your invite. And like we mentioned earlier, we are part of a podcast network, and you can see all of our shows at geek2geekcast.com.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @ProfessorBeej. That's Beej with 2 E's.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, geeks. We're so glad that you're not dead, Void. And you geeks.
That's morbid. Do something Star Wars related instead.
Wasn't in there at all. Like
I've done that before. Do something else.
Pew, 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 pew.
Okay, acceptable.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are two best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes?
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.